Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
I'm begging and pleading with you now that we need you to step up, and we need those who are responsible for these type of crimes in the city of Baltimore to be held to the strictest penalty possible.
Tonight, a city in crisis as we continue to follow breaking news. This is Baltimore Police Sergeant Isaac Carrington. He remains on life support in shock trauma tonight. Earlier today, a gunman ran him down and shot him multiple times during a robbery in Northeast Baltimore. Tonight, pleas from top officials for the public to find the person who shot the off-duty officer, backed up by a $19,000 reward for an arrest in this case. We have live team coverage of the shooting of Sergeant Carrington and the search for the gunman tonight. Keith Daniels and Alexa Ashwell will join us with reaction to the shooting in just a few moments. But first, we want to begin with Jeff Abel. He joins us live from shock trauma. He was the first reporter at the hospital this afternoon and saw Sergeant Carrington arrive. Jeff.
That's right. Sergeant Isaac Carrington remains in extremely critical condition here at shock trauma tonight. Detectives tell us he was shot over and over again in the front yard of his very own home. It was in the middle of the afternoon when panic turned to pain. At the door to shock trauma, the mayor and police commissioner were waiting as an ambulance carrying Sergeant Isaac Carrington arrived. The 22-year veteran of the city's police department had been shot multiple times.
He was shot throughout his body a number of times, and some in the torso and some in the extremities.
Police say the sergeant was off duty when he and his neighbor were approached by a masked man outside his Northeast Baltimore home.
The gunman gave chase and shot Sergeant Carrington multiple times.
I'm begging and pleading with you now that we need you to step up, and we need those who are responsible for these type of crimes in the city of Baltimore to be held to the strictest penalty possible. As police search for the masked gunman, the sergeant's family and fellow officers remain at the hospital where they wait and hope.
So he is now up in the intensive care unit. He is on life support. He is slightly more stable, but we have a bunch more tests to do to determine what, if any, other injuries are going to require therapy of some kind. And we're just at the beginning of what's going to be, I think, a somewhat protracted course.
Well, the officers' friends and family and fellow officers remain here at shock trauma tonight as the officer struggles to recover. Now, of course, that shooting did happen up in the Frankfort community in Northeast Baltimore. That's where our Keith Daniels is right now with the very latest reaction. Keith.
Well, Jeff, that shooting unfolded here on this block. Now, the yellow crime scene tape is gone at this hour. Police have reopened the street. There is still one police car parked outside of the officer's home, perhaps to keep watch after that shooting. In Northeast Baltimore, a neighborhood shut down by police after one of their own is shot.
Very unsettling because the officer, he's our neighbor, he's a sweetheart.
Investigators say Sergeant Isaac Carrington, who was off duty, was standing outside of his home on Summerfield Avenue with a neighbor when both men were victims of a robbery by a man wearing a mask. The father-in-law of that neighbor who rushed to the scene said his daughter told him what happened.
As they were standing outside, this is what I was told, that someone approached them and tried to rob them, and they robbed her husband, got his wallet and I don't know what other items, but anyway, and somehow never, when he went to run to this, that his another neighbor had ran and he got shot.
The officer shot, the neighbor was not. A stunning shooting.
Got to pray on some things, and right now the city is in turmoil.
In a neighborhood that people call a quiet place to live.
My daughter was telling me that they had just came back from a little shopping, and she had just walked into the house, and her husband was standing outside talking to the neighbor.
Well, the neighbor involved in that shooting is also at the hospital tonight. Again, he was not shot, but his daughter told me when I spoke with her earlier tonight, she told me that her father was hurt, but she did not give any details. Well, live now in Northeast Baltimore, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. A lot of reaction tonight on Twitter. And here's one that we want to show you. This is from Governor Larry Hogan. You can see it there. He says, we ask that you keep this officer in your prayers as he fights for his life. But he goes on to say that thoughts and prayers alone are not enough. We have been pushing to get these violent shooters off the streets. And now is the time for city and legislative leaders to finally join us and support our efforts. Now, this tweet drew criticism, you can see right there down below, from Councilman Nick Mosby. Baltimore County Executive, meanwhile, Johnny Oslewski, also taking to Twitter, saying, quote, Baltimore County extends its thoughts and prayers to the Baltimore police sergeant who was shot earlier today. We stand ready to assist if necessary as we await updates. Well, as this news was breaking this afternoon, we were able to speak with former Baltimore City Police Commissioner Ed Norris. He gave a description of what was happening inside the police department at the moment, but then painted the picture of the city in crisis.
This is just indicative of our city. In the last couple of weeks, we had 2 police officers shot, a deputy police commissioner robbed, and a police employee almost stomped in the street. And these are the ones that make news. So, I mean, I just think people need to realize where they live and what's going on in the city right now.
Sergeant Carrington is the 3rd Baltimore City Police employee robbed in the last 3 weeks. The 2nd city officer shot within the last month. Now, you'll recall back on July 15th, Sergeant Bill Shiflett, a 25-year member of BPD, was shot in the stomach while responding to a call of an armed person at a North Baltimore methadone clinic where 2 people were killed. Shiflett was released from the hospital a week later. It was 11 months ago that another officer, Philip Lippy, was shot in West Baltimore. That shooting happened in Lexington Terrace in September of last year. Again, in daylight. It was 6:30 in the evening. The shooting happened during a crime initiative. The officer was released from the hospital the next day. And in November of 2017, the still unsolved on-the-job death of Detective Sean Suter. Suter was shot the night before he was set to testify before a grand jury about the corrupt gun trace task force. It's still undetermined if Suter was targeted or if he committed suicide. A Baltimore City police officer died in 2007 in circumstances similar to what happened today. Detective Troy Chesley was shot and killed in a gun battle during a robbery attempt in Northwest Baltimore. The suspect, Brandon Grimes, was sentenced to life without parole. He had been arrested 17 times, twice on handgun charges. As Baltimore police search for the gunman who shot Sergeant Carrington, people gathered to discuss ways to improve their communities here in Baltimore. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell continues our team coverage live outside City Hall with their concerns tonight. Alexa.
Joy, this meeting was led by Baltimore City Council President Brandon Scott, whose heart is particularly heavy tonight, telling us he personally knows the sergeant and his family and has known them his entire life. Just hours ago, the council president stood before dozens of people in South Baltimore and listened to their concerns, including fears about gun violence. Scott also wanted feedback on his recently released proposal. The plan focuses on improving government transparency, public safety, economic development, education, and equity. Scott had to leave tonight's meeting early in order to get back to shock trauma in support of Sergeant Carrington, telling us he's known his family his entire life.
It's just another example of how everyone in Baltimore is impacted by the violence.
How has this particularly impacted you, having that relationship?
Well, listen, they all impact me, but this is, a family, someone whose family I know, but also that it's in my neighborhood, it's right around the corner from me. So this is something that impacts everyone on a daily basis. It just shows that no one is immune from this.
Scott represented the Northeast District before recently being named council president. He's also been tweeting tonight about the shooting, asking for prayers for Sergeant Carrington and his family. Reporting live outside City Hall, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. And here's a look back at what we know tonight. Baltimore Sergeant Isaac Carrington remains on life support tonight after being shot during a robbery. Sergeant Carrington is a 22-year veteran of the police force. The robbery happened along Summerfield Avenue near Todd Avenue a little before 3:30 this afternoon. Police say Sergeant Carrington was talking with a neighbor outside of his home when a vehicle pulled onto the road. A masked gunman got out, pointed a gun at them, and then robbed them. The neighbor threw his valuables on the ground and ran. Carrington ran in the other direction. Police say the gunman chased down Sergeant Carrington and shot him multiple times, at least once in the torso. Police are still trying to find the gunman tonight, but have not given a description of the person. Now, the only thing that they've said so far is about that vehicle. The vehicle may have been an Acura. State and federal agencies are offering a $19,000 reward for an arrest in this case. And stay with Fox 45 News for the latest on the shooting of Sergeant Carrington. On air and online, we will bring you more information in 10 minutes on Fox 45 News at 10. Now we want to turn to weather and check in with meteorologist Ashley Kramlich, who's been monitoring our conditions this evening and into our weekend coming up. Ashley.
Well, Joy, it's still a warm night tonight, but we're looking at a very big change heading into the next several days. Temperatures currently are running back in the 80s still here in town. Outside of town, we are in the 70s, but overall, this is pretty warm for this time of night. I think we'll wake up tomorrow morning to temperatures back in the upper 60s, north side of the metro. South side will be in the 70s, so a warm start to the morning. And it's another warm day for our Friday, but not a terrible day. 81 at 10, number at 87 by 2, and we are close to that 90-degree mark tomorrow afternoon, filled with a lot of sunshine. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll look at the rest of your weekend outlook. Joy?
So we can do better, Baltimore, and I'm counting on you to do better.
Mayor Jack Young talking about the Baltimore police sergeant shot during a robbery. Our coverage continues with the search for the people responsible and the sergeant's condition. And while Baltimore is a city in crisis with its gun violence, there's a national conversation about expanding access to guns. We'll see what that's about as the News at 10 continues. We now know that the mother of the suspected El Paso shooter called police just weeks before the mass murder, warning them that her son had an assault rifle. According to the family's lawyers, the mother of suspect Patrick Cruces wasn't worried that her son would attack people. She was reportedly concerned that he was young and had no training in handling the weapon. The new information comes as video of President Trump visits El Paso victims surfaces. The president is seen at the hospital today bragging about the crowd size at his El Paso rally several months ago.
That was some crowd.
Thank you for
And we had
you
twice
do.
the number outside. And then you had this crazy Beto. Beto had like 400 people in a parking lot. They said his crowd was wonderful.
Suspected El Paso shooter has been charged with capital murder. Prosecutors have announced that they are seeking the death penalty. President Trump's visit with victims in Dayton, Ohio yesterday also drew public criticism after he attacked Ohio leaders on his Twitter following his visit. After leaving the hospital in Dayton, the president tweeted that Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown and Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley misrepresented his hospital visits to the press. Mayor Whaley publicly responded, saying that she's not sure why the president felt misrepresented.
And we've been very open about us wanting the state and federal government to do something around gun control. We shared that with the president. He was well received by victims and first responders.
Links to donate to the families of victims in both the Dayton and El Paso shootings can be found on our website. That's foxbaltimore.com. Since the two mass shootings from over the weekend, we've heard from lawmakers, the president, and candidates for president talk about what can be done to keep guns out of the wrong hands. But as national correspondent Angelica Alvarez reports, there's also a conversation taking place about expanding access to guns.
In the days since two mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton, Washington is trying to figure out how to move forward. President Trump says he's willing to listen about ways to expand background checks on gun purchases and limiting access to guns for dangerous or unstable people.
I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection orders.
There are bipartisan efforts already underway on red flag law legislation, but it might stop there with no bipartisan support on a ban of all assault weapons. Others on and off Capitol Hill are looking at different approaches in stopping the violence.
To stop a bad guy with a gun, it takes a good guy with a gun.
That's the head of the NRA last year at a Republican event. We saw that sentiment play out last year in Florida. This is cell phone video where you can hear a man open fire in a crowd and a legally armed bystander shot him. Dr. John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Center, believes people should have the right to be armed in places like churches and in schools.
You have a so-called gun-free zone where the victims aren't allowed to defend themselves.
After the Parkland, Florida school shooting, President Trump talked about arming teachers. This year, Florida's governor signed a bill allowing teachers to be armed on school campuses. And in Texas, new gun laws kick in next month, allowing people to carry in churches and keep guns in locked vehicles in school parking lots. A recent ScottRasmussen.com poll shows more than half of Americans say they feel safer living in a community where people are free to own guns versus one where guns are outlawed. In Washington, I'm Angelica Alvarez.
I'm begging and pleading with you now that we need you to step up.
A citywide manhunt for a police shooter. Still ahead, what we know about the search to find him and the sergeant's condition right now. An ex-pastor charged of sexually abusing a teen girl on church grounds in Dundalk. Coming up, what made church elders believe it was more than a case of he said, she said.
And a cooler change coming for the weekend. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll look at that in full detail.
Back to the breaking news we've been following all evening, the shooting of Baltimore Police Sergeant Isaac Carrington. It happened a little before 3:30 this afternoon along Summerfield Avenue in northeast Baltimore. A vehicle pulled onto the street, and according to police, a masked person got out, and Carrington and his neighbor, they ran in opposite directions. The gunman chased down Sergeant Carrington and shot him multiple times.
Very unsettling because the officer, he's our neighbor, he's a sweetheart.
Officer Carrington remains on life support tonight. The search continues tonight for the gunman. State and federal agencies are offering $19,000 for information that leads to an arrest in this case. And stay with Fox 45 News for the latest on the shooting of Sergeant Carrington on air and online.
Well, good evening to you. Live look at HD radar tonight shows a pretty quiet evening. We did see a lone shower/thunderstorm move through parts of Cecil County earlier tonight, and that was all ahead of this cold front. I don't think we'll see much in the way of rain, but this cold front is really going to knock down our temperatures heading into the weekend. Speaking of temperatures, today at the Inner Harbor and at BWI, we recorded temperatures above 90 degrees. This marks the 8th day of our heat wave here in Baltimore. Every day in August, we have seen a temperature of 90 degrees or higher. This is the 5th heat wave of the year so far. And out of 42 days, we've seen 90-degree plus temperatures in 2019 so far. So a very warm year. Luckily, we're going to kick down those temperatures for the rest of the weekend. In terms of what we're looking at, HD radar and into our future scan, we'll keep a few clouds around for tomorrow, but overall it's going to be a dry Friday. Same goes for our Saturday. Notice the winds coming out of the northwest. That's going to edge in a nice breeze on Saturday, and that continues throughout the day on Sunday. Very quiet weather over the next several days. High of 89 for tomorrow, 86 for our Saturday, 85 on Sunday. It is going to be a refreshing weekend to get outside and enjoy it, because typically for this time of year is typically one of our warmest days and warmest months of the year. So the fact that we're seeing mid-80s is a little not normal for this time of year. As we head into the next several days, though, we will begin to warm back up. Low 90s for our Monday, and then we'll bring back a chance for showers and thunderstorms heading into next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Joy?
Thanks, Ashley. An ex-Maryland pastor charged, accused of child sexual assault on church grounds. Up next, the sordid story his alleged victim tells.
It's hard coming here for an organization and having had them failed us so many times.
The memories brought her to tears, while Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles says she still can't trust USA Gymnastics. A former Dundalk pastor is facing charges for abusing a teenager in his church more than a decade ago. He's now living in Florida. He came back to Maryland this week and was just charged with sexual abuse. Shelley Orman reports police fear more victims may have yet to come forward.
Fox 45 would normally not reveal the identity of sexual assault victims, but Sarah Jackson gave us permission. She has been very vocal about what she says happened here at Calvary Baptist Church, where she was a student and attended church.
Sarah Jackson wrote this on Twitter Tuesday. 15 months, 455 days. I have cried, I have prayed, I have watched my character, integrity, and my family be shredded for speaking up. Today, God's timing was revealed. Today, Cameron Giovanelli was arrested for sexually abusing me in high school. With the pending litigation, Jackson declined to do an interview with Fox 45. She has been posting about it online and in a personal blog. Jackson went to police last May.
What Sarah did took an enormous amount of courage.
The church's current pastor, Stacy Shiflett, replaced Giovanelli. He's been outspoken on the alleged abuse as well.
When I heard her story, something told me inside that there was something to this, in spite of the fact that I knew him. And then, I began to ask questions around, and a lot of the things that she told me became very credible.
According to charging documents, the abuse started in 2007 when Jackson was 17 years old, a senior. Cameron Giovanelli was 29 years old and her pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Dundalk.
Obviously, nobody knows what all happened except her and him and God, but a lot of things that she told me, I was able to confirm and corroborate, which was very disturbing.
Court documents detail the abuse. Jackson says it started with texts, then progressed to Giovanelli pulling her out of English class that was taught by his wife to teach her how to kiss. Police say the abuse escalated, taking place almost daily from January until August 2007. Jackson says it stopped when a youth pastor at the church caught them. Giovanelli left in 2014. He currently lives and works at a church in Florida. This week, he was charged in Maryland with 3 counts of sexual abuse. He has been released and ordered not to have contact with minors. Police are asking any other victims to come forward.
I'm hoping that if there are, that they would see that her courage to say something.
Giovanelli is scheduled to be back in court on August 30th for a preliminary hearing. In Dundalk, Shelley Orman, Fox 45 News.
Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles cries angry tears as she takes USA Gymnastics to task for its handling of the sex abuse scandal involving Dr. Larry Nassar.
It's hard coming here for an organization and having had them failed us so many times. And we had won gold.
That's Biles speaking from the U.S. Gymnastics Championship Wednesday. Biles revealed in January that she was also sexually abused by the former USA Gymnastics doctor.
We've done everything that they asked us for, even when we didn't want to, and they couldn't do one damn job. You had one job. You literally had one job, and you couldn't protect us.
USA Gymnastics responded to her comments, saying they supported her and have learned from past mistakes. Last year, Nassar was sentenced to up to 125 years in prison for sexually abusing more than 150 girls and women. Hundreds of music lovers flocked to Abbey Road in London today for the 50th anniversary of the iconic Beatles album release. Since the release of the album, the once simple city street has become a leading tourist spot for fans all over the world. At today's anniversary celebration, people of all ages dressed up as their favorite member of the Fab Four. The famous album cover picture was retaken with the huge crowd of fans behind the crosswalk going all the way down the street. Coming up, a new picture of Jupiter, what the photo is teaching scientists about the planet's atmosphere.
We need community support and information about who committed this heinous, cowardly act.
The late edition is less than 5 minutes away. We have live details from shock trauma, where a Baltimore police sergeant is on life support after being shot several times. What we know in his condition as detectives search for who's responsible. A stunning new picture of Jupiter from Hubble Space Telescope. The detailed portrait shows the planet's vivid colors. Also visible, the Great Red Spot, that's a storm that's been in the atmosphere for 150 years. Although bands of clouds can be seen moving toward the storm, astronomers say it appears to be shrinking. Hubble will continue to study Jupiter to gain greater insights into the storm.